Article 7, Section 12, Part C, Escrow Procedure. The following shall apply with respect to each salary cap year regarding final reconciliation. The compensation otherwise payable to each adjustment player shall be reduced by the escrow amount applicable to that player, and each team shall deposit the escrow amount with the escrow agent. Now, the base escrow amount for each adjustment player is going to be collected in 12 equal installments from each of the player's semi-monthly compensation payments on each deduction date. The performance bonus escrow amount collected in one installment, the trade bonus escrow amount in one installment, and the base escrow amount for each adjustment player under a two-way contract is going to be collected by the two-way player's team by deducting 10% of the portion of his salary on each of the 12 semi-monthly compensation payments on each deduction date. The procedure for deducting and depositing escrow amounts shall be as follows. The NBA will prepare and send to the Players Association escrow schedules on or before November 8th. The escrow schedules prepared during the regular season shall not include base escrow amounts in respect of two-way players. The schedules in respect of the May 1 deduction date shall be updated to include base escrow amounts in respect of the two-way players. Within 3 business days after each deduction date, each team will deliver to the escrow agent the aggregate base escrow amounts that the team is obligated to deduct. Within 3 business days following the last day of the NBA Finals, the aggregate performance bonus escrow amounts. Within 3 business days following the adjustment player's trade bonus deduction date, the player's trade bonus escrow amount. All amounts received by the escrow agent shall be invested and dispersed in accordance with the salary escrow agreement. With respect to two-way players, within 3 business days of January 1, March 1, and May 1 deduction dates, the aggregate amount withheld from the compensation for the team's two-way players for the prior 3 deduction dates and current deduction date. Every salary cap year, an adjustment player's full escrow amount will be delivered to the escrow agent. After November 8th, the NBA will periodically update the escrow schedules. Any portion of a base escrow amount that has not been deducted as of the date any such updated schedules are prepared shall be deducted in equal installments from the remaining semi-monthly compensation payments to be made to the player from November 15th to May 1 of that applicable salary cap year. Now, this shall not apply. The procedure shall not apply to two-way players on two-way contracts. Within 7 days of receiving the escrow schedules, the Players Association may bring a proceeding before the system arbitrator contesting the NBA's calculation of any of the escrow amounts. Okay, in the event that the NBA makes a determination that an escrow amount was erroneously calculated, the sole remedy shall be to modify the deduction schedule applicable as to reduce in equal amounts all scheduled future deductions from post-determination payments of compensation until the amount of any prior over-deduction is fully offset. If reducing the player's future deductions would not fully offset the prior over-deductions, the party shall instruct the escrow agent to pay the player as soon as practicable with interest. Part D, Reconciliation Procedures. In the event of an overage, the NBA shall be entitled to receive from the escrow agent the player's individual compensation adjustment amount, and each adjustment player shall be entitled to receive from the escrow agent the amount, if any, by which the player's escrow amount exceeds his individual compensation adjustment amount. In the event there is no overage, each adjustment player will receive from the escrow agent his entire escrow amount. Any interest earned on escrow amounts shall be allocated among the adjustment players collectively and the NBA in proportion to the percentage of the aggregate escrow amounts that the adjustment players collectively and the NBA are to receive from the escrow agent. The adjustment players' collective share of interest shall be allocated among individual players in proportion to the amount that each player is entitled to receive from the escrow agent. The party shall cause the accountants to include in the interim audit report and the audit report, or the interim escrow audit report if needed, for each cap year, schedule setting forth with respect to such cap year, the amount of any overage, the aggregate salaries and benefits adjustment amount, the aggregate compensation adjustment amount, new benefits adjustment amounts, and the amount of the reduction in the additional benefit amount, each adjustment player's individual compensation adjustment amount, each adjustment player's escrow amount, a list of all adjustment players whose individual compensation adjustment amounts exceed their escrow amounts, and the list shall include individual comp adjustment amount, escrow amount, the amount that exceeds his escrow amount, the sum of all such escrow amounts, such players' escrow amounts, and individual compensation adjustment amounts, and the aggregate amount by which all the players' individual compensation adjustment amounts exceed their escrow amounts. Also will be included a list of all adjustment players whose individual compensation adjustment amounts are equal to or less than their escrow amounts. Also to be included, the percentage of the interest earned on the escrow amounts to be allocated to the NBA, the percentage of interest earned on the escrow amounts to be allocated to the adjustment players collectively, and the percentage of the interest to be allocated to each individual adjustment player. Also, the tax level and the amount, if any, by which each team's salary as computed exceeds the tax level. The party shall cause the accountants to include in the audit report a separate notice to the NBA and the Players Association in the form attached to the salary escrow agreement, which will set forth. So paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, paragraph 4 has designated information that will be put into that form. And you can find that information on page 255 and 256. Now, no later than 7 business days after the earlier of the completion of the audit report for the prior cap year or the completion of the audit report challenge period, the NBA and or the Players Association will deliver to the escrow agent the completed notice to the NBA and the Players Association. The escrow agent shall disperse the specified sums to specific specified payees. Any amount that the escrow agent is obligated to disperse shall be reduced by all amounts required to be withheld by federal, state, local authorities, i.e. taxes. In no circumstance shall the employer's share of FICA, FUTA, or any other employer taxes be paid out of the amounts deposited in escrow or any interest or earnings thereon. Any such obligation shall remain with each player's individual employer. Part E, Aggregate Compensation Adjustment Amount Shortfalls. If there is an aggregate compensation adjustment amount shortfall, then the contract, other than a two-way contract, of each of the following cap year's adjustment players shall be amended by operation of this agreement, such that the aggregate compensation paid with respect to the season covered by such following cap year shall be reduced by the aggregate compensation adjustment amount shortfall. The individual shortfall adjustment amount for each adjustment player whose contract is amended via Section 12E1 will be calculated by multiplying the aggregate compensation adjustment amount shortfall for the prior cap year by a fraction. The numerator is the player's then current salary. The denominator is the sum of all such players' then current salaries. For the purposes of calculating the fraction, the salary of a player making the minimum player's salary will include the portion that was reimbursed out of the league-wide benefits fund and any contract under a rookie scale contract whose compensation is increased via Article 8, Section 5 will include the portion attributable to the rookie scale conforming increases that is reimbursed out of the league fund. The individual shortfall adjustment amount shall be deducted by the player's team in 4 equal installments from each of the player's first 4 semi-monthly payment dates under paragraph 3 of the Uniform Player Contract, following the delivery to the escrow agent of the completed notice to the NBA and the Players Association. Part F, team payments. Each team whose team salary exceeds the tax level will be required to pay a tax to the NBA. The tax shall be calculated using the rates in the, quote, standard tax rates for any team whose team salary did not exceed the tax level in 3 or more of the 4 cap years immediately preceding the current cap year, and using the, quote, repeater tax rates for any team whose team salary exceeded the tax level in 3 or more of the 4 cap years immediately preceding the current cap year. Now, the standard tax rates are on page 258, and the repeater tax rates are on 259. And there are 2 pretty good examples of a team going above the tax level on those pages. Now, for purposes of computing the amount of tax a team owes, a team's team salary shall be the sum of its team salary as of the start of its regular season game, plus all performance bonuses excluded from salary but actually earned by the player, less all the performance bonuses included in salary but not actually earned, plus, with respect to any trade following the conclusion of the team's last regular season game, the portion of any trade bonus earned by the player that is included in team salary, plus any amount that is added to the team salary following the last regular season game via Section 4A1 III, and the salary attributable to a contract between a team and a free agent with 0 years of service or 1 year of service shall be deemed the greater of the salary or the minimum player's salary that will be applicable to the player with 2 years of service, or in the event that the player's contract is terminated, then the minimum player salary that will be applicable to a player with 2 years of service reduced pro rata to reflect the player's post-termination salary. Now, each team that owes a tax is required to make the payment to the NBA no later than 10 business days following the earlier of the completion of the audit report for the prior cap year or the completion of the audit report challenge period. Part G, escrow and tax proceeds. All amounts remitted to the NBA by the escrow agent shall be the exclusive property of the NBA, subject only to the following limitations. The escrow amounts remitted to the NBA by the escrow agent shall be used and or distributed as follows to NBA teams, provided it must be made to all teams in equal shares, and amounts not distributed shall be used for one or more, quote, league purposes. The tax amounts remitted to the NBA by NBA teams shall be used and or distributed as follows. The NBA may distribute up to 50% to one or more teams based on the fact that those teams did not owe a tax. Amounts not distributed can be used for one or more, quote, league purposes. The use of escrow amounts for tax amounts for a, quote, league purpose shall mean the distribution of such amounts to one or more teams, provided, however, that the amounts may not be distributed to a team or expended for the benefit or detriment of a team in a manner that is based on the team's team salary or on whether the team is a taxpayer. A team assistance plan adopted by the NBA and funded with escrow amounts and or tax amounts shall be considered a, quote, league purpose if a team's entitlement to an assistance receipt is based on a profit, loss, or an expense computation determined by the NBA under which the team is credited with a team salary no less than the league average, provided that such plan may not be based on the amount of a team's team salary or on whether the team is a taxpayer. Part H, revenue decline. If BRI for any salary cap year substantially decreases from the prior cap year's BRI, and as a result the players receive more than the designated share, then the NBA and the Players Association shall negotiate an adjustment. Part I is miscellaneous. The computation of an adjustment player's salary shall be made without regard to any reduction in the player's compensation via Section 12. Now, consistent with one-year minimum contracts and existing rookie scale contract increases, except for purposes of calculating the amounts referred to in the definitions of escrow amount, individual compensation adjustment amount, and individual shortfall adjustment amounts, the salary of every player who signs a one-year contract for the minimum player salary shall, for the purposes in this section, be the lesser of the minimum player salary for that player or the portion of the salary that is not reimbursed out of the league fund, and the salary of every rookie scale player whose comp under the rookie scale contract is increased shall equal the player's salary under his contract prior to the application of those increases and shall not include any portion that was reimbursed out of the fund. The salary of a player who is suspended by the NBA but not by a team shall be reduced by 50% of the suspension-related compensation amount that is collected from the player and retained by the NBA at the time the computations of the accountants are made. Other than what was just said, the computation of the player's salary shall be made without regard to any reduction in compensation that results from the player's suspension by the NBA or his team. When a player has forfeited compensation as a result of a suspension, and his compensation is later reduced via Section 12B1 and 2, the player shall be entitled to a refund of the portion of the compensation forfeited as a result of the suspension. The refund shall be in an amount equal to the player's individual compensation adjustment amount multiplied by a fraction. The numerator is the amount that was forfeited. The denominator is the player's base compensation as of the date he served the suspension, less all amounts required to be withheld by federal, state, local, and for the purposes of the calculation required, the player's individual compensation adjustment amount shall be deemed to include only the portion that relates to the player's base compensation earned for that NBA team that he was playing with while suspended. The refund shall be made to the player within 60 days following the accountant's submission of the final audit report or interim escrow audit report. Now, in the event that the overage for any cap year exceeds the total of aggregate salaries and benefits adjustment amount plus the additional benefit amount, the NBA shall not be entitled to reduce player compensation in such cap year or any subsequent cap year so as to recover any amounts in excess of the aggregate compensation adjustment amount. That concludes Article 7, Section 12, Part 2, pages 249 to 264, covering escrow and tax arrangement. Happy studying. See you at the top.